Welcome back to Common Sense Cafe. I'm Jeff.
And Kevin.
Well, it's good to be with you today. We wrapped up our Father's Day session just previous to this episode. Hopefully you'll get to watch it, to like it, to share it with someone, and hopefully it was a benefit to you. If it wasn't, whatever you do, don't tell us. We'd rather just be ignorant and think that we've done some good for you. So one of the things, I looked up a couple of quotes.
Oh, yeah?
Common Sense Cafe. I thought, every once in a while we ought to say something about common sense.
We ought to sound smart.
Yeah. So I looked up a couple of quotes about common sense. Victor Hugo said that.
Oh, I know Victor.
Okay, he's a good guy. Yeah.
Good guy.
Victor said, common sense is in spite of, not the result of, education. I thought that was pretty cool.
Hey, say that again.
So common sense is in spite of, not the result of, education.
That's good.
And I think that there's a measure of common sense in us all.
Yeah. I had along that lines, I hate to say it, but it was a minister. We were in the hallway one day and getting ready to eat at this church, and I could tell by his conversation he wasn't too fond of education, of college education. And he kind of questioned me on it. He said, and it shocked me, he said, well, what did they teach you in college? And I didn't say anything, but I wanted to say, they taught me how to recognize BS when I hear it.
Right.
So,
well, Harriet Beecher Stowe, which I admire in writings and so forth.
he must have been your neighbor. I don't know him.
Yeah, common sense is the knack of seeing things as they are and doing things as they ought to be done.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so I thought
Yeah.
those were
Seeing things as they are, but doing things as they ought to be done.
yeah. So that's just common sense.
Boy, that's some good quotes right there.
Yeah. So even though I thought we had coined that phrase "common sense," evidently we hadn't. Other people had thoughts on it before we did. So
I wonder if we're saying anything quote worthy.
yeah. Well, I tell you what we'll do from now on. We'll go around. I'll quote you, and then you quote me.
Okay. That'd be good.
All right. So last time we were together,
Okay, wait. It's what, 8:30?
Yes, it's early. It's early.
8:30 a.m.
Yeah, and we, after setting up and everything,
Lord,
we've been here for a while. So
We should have. I'm always better at 8:30 p.m. So.
It's a lot easier when you've contemplated all day instead of getting up and trying to do it when you slept.
Yeah, my common sense tends to build during the day.
Kicks in around noon.
Yeah.
But so last time we were together, we talked about our dad. We talked about some of the inconsistency versus consistency. We spoke about good name versus, or good reputation versus a poor reputation, and dishonesty versus honesty, and all that we had learned from growing up with a bad example. So basically, our catchphrase was how to gain perspective while hiding behind the couch.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Because our dad was very violent, and sometimes you were hiding behind the couch in a literal.
Yeah, literally hiding behind the couch.
So. So we shared that with you. So today, I suppose this is terrible, but we're happy to say that there came a time where Mom said, "That's enough. I'm not going to be married to this man anymore.
Right.
The violence is too much. The adultery is too much. The mental abuse is too much." And Mom made a good decision and said,
She did,
I'm going to separate myself from this
It was a
relationship.
tough time for women to get a divorce at that time because, this is in the 70s and it still was not mainstream, I guess. I don't know if that's the right phrase for that, but women didn't have the opportunities to I don't think they could make the income
Right.
without that men could. And I struggle with saying Daddy or Freddie, but
Yeah.
But I think for respect's sake, we'll just say Dad or Daddy. But he never paid child support.
Right,
Until
that's
he
correct.
was at one point arrested for it.
Forced, yeah, kind of got
So-
forced into. But you're right. It was a time where society had was not readily accepting of divorce, and for some reason, the woman always seemed to catch the more negative image of someone that
Well,
was
that's
divorced.
right too, yeah.
But the church also was still very adamant against divorce, and so as a minister and as a Christian, a believer, and a person who believes in what the Scripture says, I do say avoid divorce at all costs. I think that's what the Scripture teaches. But then we have to recognize, the church, society, everybody has to recognize that there are biblical and legitimate reasons for divorce.
Yeah.
There are times where divorce, I tell people that a distant relationship is better than a destructive relationship. Some people you can't have in your life up close.
That's
because
good.
if you do, it's just destructive. So with with Dad being violent and being an adulterer and our lives in constant turmoil and everything, divorce was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It was the only thing to do.
You marry for life,
Right.
but that don't mean you should die for it.
Yeah.
At the hands of the spouse.
Literally. That's right.
At the
Literally.
hands of the spouse, yeah.
And it's not that our mama didn't pray for him and witness to him and do the things that she thought she should do for a
Well,
non-believing
He went
spouse.
to church.
Yeah, that's true. He did.
Went to church with us all the time. Yeah, I remember one particular time just kind of sticks out in my mind. You mentioned adultery, and again, we were probably 9, 10, something like that when this went on. But I remember Mama, we were all in the car, me, you, and Debbie and Mama, and she was going around from hotel to hotel there in town looking for him.
Yeah.
And finally found him in one of the hotels there with someone else.
Yeah.
And we were right there. And
Yeah,
see
it was.
it.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, it was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
it wasn't. It wasn't like it was
Right.
at 7:30 or 8 o'clock. It was. So it was a lot of turmoil. So, I suppose our question that we want to try to address, and hope give some common sense solutions to some things. How to have success in a divorce.
right.
So-
How to have a successful divorce.
So you heard it here first. Again, we're not.
Divorce can be successful.
That's right. We're not promoting divorce. We're promoting success
That's
in your
right.
life. And if divorce is part of your life, we want you to be successful in that as well.
Yes, it shouldn't be something that ruins the rest of your life.
And the impact it has on the people around you. We always have to be cognitive of the fact that no man is an island unto himself, that what we do has a ripple effect. And that ripple effect, first and foremost, impacts the people closest to us.
Right.
The people closest to the rock dropping in the pool,
Hmm.
they're the ones that are affected at the greatest extent. So that would be our children.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about our mom and dad's unsuccessful divorce. It was not a success story.
It was not. No.
So what sticks out to you as one of the things that was most damaging?
Well, 2 things actually. One being that we wouldn't hear from Dad for a month or 2 at a time. And just about the time that things were leveled out and settled with us, and we're in routine and doing all right, we'd hear from him. You know, he'd call, and any time he called, it was just chaos. He didn't call to talk to us. He called to complain about Mama.
Mm-hmm.
And along with that, I gotta say, Mama complained about him.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a constant bombardment from both sides that the other side was so terrible. We lived it. We knew what was terrible.
Right. Yeah. Though we may not have had that adult understanding and complete comprehension of what had taken place in their lives.
Right.
It was easy to identify who had done what at what point, and the other tagging on to that was that when they did that, when they talked about those, it made you go back and relive those bad moments of your life.
That's
You went back, if he called and said, well, your mama did this, or if mama said, well, you remember he did this. Well, I don't want to remember that.
No.
I don't want to remember that. I want to push that out of my life, but they did. I think the thing that I think about when you talk about they wanted us to choose sides.
That's it, yes.
They wanted us to be on a certain team, on one team or the other, and it's not fair.
No, it isn't. It isn't fair to the kids.
No.
No matter what age the kids are.
That's right.
It's just not fair. My thoughts slipped my mind. So.
Well, in that struggle of trying to not choose a side, you found yourself in this huge dilemma, feeling okay. When I'm with mom and she's talking to me about dad, I'm betraying dad. When I'm with dad and he's talking about mom, I'm betraying mom.
Right.
But in my role as a child, I don't have the authority to say, okay, y'all don't talk to me about this.
Right.
And it was very traumatic for me anyway. It was very traumatic.
Like I say, when I say we wouldn't hear from him for a couple months and we'd just be getting settled, well, what was getting settled was the knots in our stomach.
Right, that's right.
The turmoil inside that we were living in this world of just, they weren't physically together, but they were still hitting each other with
verbally and mentally and emotionally. And
exactly, and we were right there. Really, they were hitting us instead of each other. And one thing about divorce is once you're divorced, common sense says the only reason to attack the other person is you're wanting to hurt somebody.
That's right.
And like we're talking about, you're not hurting the person that or as much, you're not hurting the person that you're trying to attack. You're hurting everybody, the kids, the relatives, just anyone involved.
If you've had any kind of marriage at all to where the relationship has at one time or another been amicable, you have built relationships with that person's parents, with that person's siblings. You have nieces and nephews, and
right.
Unless you're a monster, you care about those people.
Yeah.
And what your divorce is again causing that ripple effect, is flowing throughout that entire family. And you're losing more than just the relationship with your spouse. You're losing a relationship with the entire family, friends that you've made, nieces and nephews. Again, your actions can cause them to feel like I've got to choose a side. Yeah. Now, we're not talking about who's right or wrong in the divorce.
No.
We're talking about emotionally choosing a side.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if they're telling you you've got to love one and hate the other, and that there's no middle ground.
And honestly, if you have made an impact. I mean, they were married, I don't know,
12 years?
Yeah, maybe 11, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. But if you've made a positive impact on the other relatives in the family, they're already going to suffer from the loss of that relationship.
Positive impact, you're right.
But primarily the big thing that we really truly understand is how torturous it is for the kids to live through this chaos back and forth. You've divorced, quit hurting each other. You hurt each other before the divorce. After the divorce, quit hurting each other.
Right.
It's just to say that you still, well, I hate to say it, in some ways you still care, but you're just angry.
Right.
You're just an angry person at that point.
Yeah.
You can't, and I say you can't. It is so hard to go through divorce and not be angry.
Sure.
And I've been through divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And my boys were 3 and 1 or 2 and 1 when their mother left, and I got custody of the boys. I think my boys can testify to this, and I hope they would, because this is the honest truth. Their mother left them, left me, left them. She was in a bad way.
Right.
And she didn't come back into their life until 18 years later, at least 18 years, maybe longer than that, because she didn't come back into their life until after Janice, my late wife, passed away.
Now, define what you mean by come back in their life,
Oh,
because it wasn't just, it wasn't like she came back apologetic and.
Right. Now that I think of it, you're right, it's longer than that, because
Yeah.
Janice and I were married 24 years.
Yeah, your boys were
24.
about 30 years old.
That's right,
So it'd have been almost 28
So
years.
she came back into their life at that point. But what I was wanting to get to is that I never talked to the boys about all the bad things that she did. I didn't. I don't, I didn't see a need, and it wasn't their fault, and nor could they do anything about
Right.
it. The only thing they could do is feel bad and say, I had a sorry mother, or maybe I inherited some
Right,
traits like
right.
that.
And they began to own part of that divorce they had nothing to
yeah,
do with.
that they weren't even, they were babies, really.
Yeah, so them not knowing their mother, really, because, 28 years, they didn't know their mother.
Right.
There was no sense in you laying at their doorstep, her traits, all of her actions, all of the garbage that you had already put behind you anyway.
Right.
One of the things, I know, we want to get back, I want you to finish out that story, but the one thing I want to bring out real quickly, and we'll talk more about later, is you were intentional in that.
That's right.
And I think therein is one of the struggles with divorce. In the middle of struggles, in the middle of divorce, in the middle of problems in our life, it's very difficult to be intentional.
It is.
We become emotional, reactionary, when we really need to be intentional. So going back to your divorce and how you manage that, and
Well, as the parent, I do understand that you've been wronged, and you want your children to know you've been wronged. But they don't have to understand that.
right,
I never talked to them about their mother, what went on, nothing. All they knew is that she left when they were little. But here's what happened. After she came back into their life, after Janice had passed away, it did bother me. But I didn't say anything. I still didn't say anything. I didn't say, well, you shouldn't have anything to do
Right.
with her. I just let them go, and they got close to her. One of my sons went and lived with her for a little while, for about a year, while he went to welding school. And the boys went and visited her and got relatively close to her again. But it didn't last. It didn't last long at all. And then for themselves, they learned what she was like.
right,
For themselves, they made up their own mind that this is not their mother.
right,
They saw Janice as their mother, who
Right.
raised them for
Right,
all those
right.
years. And they determined later, now they don't have a relationship with her, because as usual, she destroyed that relationship with them again. So I didn't have to, and it's not that I feel justified in it, because to me, she is nobody.
right,
That's like it happened to somebody else 30 years ago, not me anymore.
right,
And that's the way, I know you don't get to that point in a hurry,
right,
but at some point you've got to come to grips with that person is my past. That doesn't determine my future.
that's right,
And I can't keep hurting my children about them. Now, my situation, she wasn't in their lives for all those years.
Right. She didn't live down the road.
Right. So I didn't have some of the problems that couples have in divorce, where they still have to communicate with each other and work out visitation and all that. But even that, for your kids' sake, you've got to do it in a calm manner. You've got to put on a face of at least cooperation.
Right. Well, let me ask you a couple of things about their divorce and some of the statements that you made. So, how was there a feeling when their mother comes back in? Was there a small? I mean, because it was, like I said, 25, 28 years later. Was there still a small feeling of betrayal?